Hey guys, so today's video is another project video. You can see here I have two pearl marching snare drums. I think they're 14 by 10 or 14 by 11. I could measure them later, but we'll look at the badge on this one, which you can see is under the tension rod. I don't think it's supposed to be like that, but pearl marching percussion. They are free-floating Kevlar headed snares, and there are a bunch of problems that I need to fix. These come from the middle school where I teach percussion, and they used to be the high school drum line in the 90s, I think, and they've since been replaced. But you can see this head here is a ambassador snare side from just like a kit drum. It doesn't make any sense to be on this high tension marching drum at all. So we got to change that out. What I have for that is I've got some Philams 2 snare sides that I just pulled off of some old drums that I replaced it with something else. So these are still in okay shape. They don't have holes in them. Not only is this a drum kit snare head, there is just a straight hole in it right here. So that's not going to work. Another issue is the top head of this one, which is a marching head. It's a white Max Weather King Remo. There's just literally a hole in it right here, and someone put tape over it as if that was going to fix it. That is not going to fix it. So this will catastrophically fail at some point, and that's really going to freak some kids out. So I'm going to try to avoid that happening. So I'm going to just replace this head entirely, and then on the other side of this drum, there's also just like a Mylar kit drum head. So this, is set up like a low tension old school marching snare. This is set up like a high tension modern one, but they're exactly the same drum. So I'm going to try to even them out as well as fix the obvious glaring problems. And we'll see how it goes. And I would play them now, except that this one doesn't even play now. This one sounds all right, but no snare response. It's just like a brick. So anyway, there's not even a point in playing them now. But we'll play them at the end, hopefully, and we'll see what they sound like. The first step in this process is just to use this gigantic drum key and take the heads off of this one completely and replace them. Removing these is kind of a giant hassle because even when they're loose, they have a different thread pitch. You got to go the lefty-loosey way. They have a different thread pitch and size than modern, drum kit drums have, because of course they're under higher tensions. And then there are 12 of them instead of the 8 or 10 on a kit snare. So the whole process, there's more turns and there's more lugs, so it just takes forever. So I got all the tension rods loosened. I can just take this hoop off now. And we can look at this shell. What's cool about these drums is that they are actually truly 100% free floating. There's nothing in the shell. If I can get this camera to focus. Nope. There we go. Kind of. There's nothing in the shell but vent holes. Not one screw goes through this shell. There are vent holes near the snare wires. There's a set of 2 on each side. And then there are two vent holes up near the batter head. You can see them there. And that's it. Nothing else goes through the shell. The coolest part of the fact that they're free floating is that this is just not attached. This just sits in here. It's completely free, as they say. The only thing holding this in is when you have the resonant head on there. It otherwise is completely detached. It's not connected to the top hoop. It's not connected to any of the lugs. It just sits. So now we just have to drop on the actual marching snare head. I'm going to put it on the same way it was on the other drum, just for consistency. And I just have to reverse the process. Just put the hoop back on and tighten up 12 of these lugs again. Now I'm ready to put the snare wires back on. What we have here is synthetic gut snares, and they have these individual adjustments on them, which is really cool. You can just put a Phillips head screwdriver in here, tension every snare independently. On this end, they just kind of have a nub and they're held in place at the same spot. So the way this works is the strainer here and here, you just thread them through one side and into the other, and then there's a screw, like a thumb screw, and you just tighten them up. So we'll check that out. in, this end just hooks in here, and then this end, there's a knob here, you can hopefully see that, and you just line up the threads. I got it to go, it's a better view here. You just tighten this, and that puts tension on the snares, and then this here doesn't actually tension the snares. It's kind of different than drum kit snares if you're not familiar with these. This actually just adjusts how close to the head they are, where this actually pulls the tension on them. So it's like more adjustments than your standard drum set snare. Now we're ready to fight with the batter head. As you can see, this is just a mylar with like a clear dot. This probably sounded okay, but it's not going to mesh with heads that have, you know, they're made of Kevlar. It's not going to sound similar at all. So what I have is this White Max Remo head, which is the same one that was on that one, but without a hole in it. And I have another one, so they'll match. And this is used, but like only for a couple of seasons, and not by very hard hitters, so you can't actually even really see any stick marks on it. I'm not sure how this is so lightly used, but it is, and we're going to use it. And I'm just going to put it here, so repeat the process. Take all 12 of these things out, take the hoop off, put this back on, then tune it back up. The interesting thing is, once we get inside, these type of marching drums, if you're not familiar with them, the bearing edge, where the head actually tensions to, is not made of wood. The first 1.5 inches here is actually metal. It's part of the floating, lug system, and then the wood shell just kind of starts down lower. It's very strange from a kit drumming, non-free floating perspective to have that happen, but it means that like the tons of force that you're putting on from the lugs and then further bashing with sticks is not going directly onto a wood bearing edge, because I don't think that would work very well. It wouldn't last very long. So having the metal bearing edge definitely helps, and then it doesn't get warped or cracked or chipped or anything like that too, which is kind of cool. These things are near bulletproof. There's just a few parts you could possibly even break, which mostly it's the heads. So now I'm going to put this head back on, just tighten it up and tune it regularly. And this drum over here I think is actually at a reasonable pitch, so I'm going to try to match that here before I mess with this one, so that I can then match this one back to that one, and then we end up basically in the same place that we started. And of course, the first thing is I'm just going to put all these in to essentially finger tight so that they're the same, and then we'll turn the camera back on when I start actually like tuning. Okay, they're all finger tight now. And a lot of people say, you have to do a lot of pushing on the head and everything to get this seated and all that, but this has already been tensioned onto a drum, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's probably not going to make like the weird cracking noises and stuff, or at least not very much of it. And the process here is a lot like tuning a kit snare. There's just more lugs and we're going to go a lot farther. So I'm just going to go across, so that it sort of gets an even tension, and we're going to try to bring it up to the pitch of the other drum. Alright, so I did the same thing to the other drum, more or less, but it turns out I didn't have the same reso heads, and you can kind of tell from the wear on the logos here, like this head is actually a lot less used than this head, so they're never going to sound quite the same, but they do both function and are tensioned up to a reasonable modern marching drum tension. So since these are going to the middle school, I thought I'd play like a middle school level solo. So I'm going to play Add a Pop by Ed Freytag from the Rudimental Cookbook, which is right about at that level.